Hello and welcome to the show, and I'm delighted that I'm here in Limerick and we're overlooking Francis Street in Limerick, and I'm delighted that Kieran Harte from Uber has joined me as well. Kieran, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me.
No, it's great to have you, and it's I suppose it's great to first of all start off about talking about the Uber success story. It has been Uber successful itself. So explain to us the origins of Uber first, for anybody that's been, I suppose, living under a rock for the past 5 years.
It is a pretty amazing story. I guess we're one of the fastest growing companies in the history of the world. In over 5 years, we're now in over 360 cities, 70 countries across 6 continents. So that's pretty incredible growth, pretty incredible scale. Compared to not just brands like Coke and McDonald's, but even digital brands like Facebook, that level of scale and that adoption of the Uber technology has been pretty incredible. So, yeah, 5 years we've grown to quite a lot of cities and countries.
And you kind of made comparisons there to other massive global brands as well, but they didn't kind of start or grow up in the age of technology and social media and all of these kind of things either. So, has it been that much of an extraordinary success story in terms of from that point of view when you compare it to other brands that started back in the 1890s and things like that?
Well, apart from, and that's very much a fair point, apart from Facebook, which is I guess that sort of digital brand, and that's kind of where it is an amazing story, because operationally we have feet on the street. We have cars driving around the streets of 360 cities. This is business which exists just in the
3 million journeys a day, is that right?
Around 3 million journeys a day around the world. So that's a huge business in just over 5 years. Yeah,
it's extraordinary growth, and I think, how does a company grow that fast? I mean, what's behind it all? Because it's one thing to turn around and go, we're a high potential startup, but this is just a completely different level.
With great vision, of our founders and our CEO, great drive and great growing pains. I mean, in terms of staff, we are doubling our staff size every 6 months. For the last 5 years. That's pretty incredible.
It is, yeah.
People walk in the door today, and we can pretty much be guaranteed that you're not going to be in that same role in 6 months' time. It's been.
So can we stop calling Uber a startup then? Because if you've got thousands or tens of thousands of employees, you're not really a startup anymore, are you? You're just you're a big company.
It would.
A power hitter.
I'm sure you can say that in San Francisco, but when you go and see some of the cities we're first moving into with teams of 3, they are very scrappy, startup-minded operations, and I think one of the ways that we keep scaling the way we do is that we really do consider ourselves to have that scrappy startup mentality.
And that scrappy startup mentality has been very interesting, because it's made you a lot of headlines around the world over the past couple of years as well, both very good and both very bad, or depending on your point of view. How do you compete with that? Because you've grown so fast that it's very hard to keep abreast on everything that's going on within the company. So, I mean, is it a PR battle? Is it or how does it work now?
It probably starts from clearly understanding what we want to do, and there's a real passion within Uber about the mission we're on and what we're trying to achieve. So you're right, there is controversy that creeps up around the different markets we're in, but at the very core of what we want to do, we want to make transport reliable enough that there's always a car within a tap of the button, a few minutes around you, and affordable. We want to make sure that it's affordable enough that it could actually challenge people's need to own their own private cars. And so that's kind of, that simple concept is what our whole business is just driving towards. And so the rest of the things that come at us, I guess, they're easy to battle through when you really have that clear vision of what you want to do and what you want to bring to cities.
Has it exposed perhaps as well the parts of the inefficiencies within owning a taxi service? I mean, you're sitting outside a shopping centre or a cinema or wherever it might be, somewhere busy, concert, for half an hour, 45 minutes. If it's a busy weekend, you're still going to be sitting there for 5 or 10 minutes before somebody uses a taxi. Has it kind of revealed just how much there they're sitting around in a taxi for a start.
Yeah, it certainly has. I mean, the beauty of Uber is just the simplicity. It's just being able to pull out that smartphone, hit a button, and have a driver arrive out the front of you and pick you up and take you wherever you want to go safely and affordably. So it has, I think, we've probably come at the transportation game from a different angle. We're a technology company. We're created by two computer scientists. We don't come at this game from years and years of working with radio companies or things like that.
But it was I suppose, and I wrote about this in the Irish Examiner a while back, and it was you didn't invent taxis, but you did invent a system where everybody was connected, from the customer to the driver. Everybody was connected. There was no middleman. There was nothing like that. It was just there, and that's what the key to, I suppose, the successful generation of startups is. That if you offer people everything, no middleman in between, it's you, it's the end, and that's it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on it before. It's the utilisation that is so important to us. It's making sure that we set ourselves up so that we cut down on any sort of efficiencies in a person who switches the app on from a partner driver's perspective. When they switch that app on, they can get as many jobs as they can before they decide they switch it off and stop working. So we really focus on trying to cut out all the inefficiencies which stopped people from going on to their next job and being more efficient and making more money at the time.
Just just go back to the growth side of things as well for the company. Is there an argument to be said for a company growing too fast?
HR division would probably say yes. There's certainly growing pains, and but that is part of the beauty. As I said before, it's so exciting to see this company grow so fast, and that we're a company that at the core we love solving problems, and these are just other problems. How do we scale? How do we create better efficiencies, not only for the service we provide, but internally? How do we provide better efficiencies ourselves? So I think we learn a lot. I mean, our scale and moving out across the globe has been really, really powerful, but yet we're certainly learning how to do things probably more efficiently and probably more smartly in every new city we go into.
Does that also kind of go along with the same lines as, I suppose, I read your article the other week at the Belfast Telegraph as well. There seems to be a sense of the facilities here, whether you like it or not, is not the issue, but there does seem to be an outstanding issue, which is that the law needs to come up to date with how you're trying to operate as opposed to the way it used to operate in terms of services like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And regulation is one of those things that we often, I guess, butt head in the many jurisdictions we move into. We totally get that regulation is always going to lag behind where the technology is. That's because it's there to make judgment on the services that are there. It's not really regulation's job to be the innovator for new technologies like ours. So what we find though is we come into markets where sometimes these regulations have been written before the mobile phone was invented, let alone the smartphone. So we come across some.
Well, there's your problem.
Yeah, and I think that's the challenge for us, is to make sure that, I mean, we totally believe in regulation. We believe that, and we take safety as our core concern. We want to make sure that these services are regulated, but they need to be regulated with the technology that's available now in mind, as opposed to what was fit for cause 20 years ago.
Talk to me a little about, we're here in Limerick, of course, the Centre of Excellence in Limerick. Why Limerick? What was the thinking behind it? What did it offer?
The centre was set up to service all of our operations across Europe, Middle East and Africa. The majority of usage there initially was with English spoken queries. So what we focused on there was making sure that we had obviously great communication, and English as a first language helped that. That put Ireland rocketing to the top of the pile. We then came and met a load of different cities, and Limerick really stood out to us. Limerick was really, really a strong contender for the level of talent there. So they've got some really good colleges and universities here in Limerick which are providing staff that we were looking to have in to join the company.
I heard you talk when you did a talk with Pat Carroll at Startup Grind at the Strand Hotel, and one of the interesting points that you made was that Limerick had a design on its future. What did you mean by Limerick having a design in its future, or designing its future?
So we met with Con Murray and the team and introduced what we would like to do, and we were really bowled over by the vision that Limerick City had for, I guess, redesigning themselves. You know, the course of the last 10 years, the City Council has purchased some really important pieces of real estate in town, and now have a clear objective to be able to design Limerick to best suit Limerick's needs. And that was really appealing for us to come in and sort of say, wow, we can see that you're building quarters here for education, you know, for the students to come and move into.
And building up big companies inside the city centre, because right now all the big companies are out in the industrial zones in the suburbs, you know, Outlier, UL and LIT and places like that.
And that's got a huge benefit to us, being able to find an incredible space like this in the heart of the city. Has huge benefits to us and our staff, and in recruiting top staff, but also, I mean, we're an urban company. We at the moment solve...
It's your target market.
It really is, and we solve problems that affect cities around the world. So it was important to us to be in the heart of the city and to really become a part of Limerick if we're going to move here.
And so what's the future of the centre as well? Because we kind of took a bit of a tour before we started talking as well. You've got a French team upstairs as well, and maybe bringing in more foreign language teams as well into the centre too. So is this going to be a European centre of excellence? Is that the goal?
Well, at the moment it's already EMEA, so it's European, Middle East and African. One of the challenges with it being with a company that's only existed for over 5 years is we don't really have 5-year plans. So our growth and our skill set needs to be in adapting to where the business takes us.
5-year plans are overrated anyway.
But the exciting thing for us, the exciting thing for Limerick and the Centre of Excellence here is that depending on how big the business grows across Europe, the Middle East and Africa, Limerick's going to be the heart of that. Limerick is going to be the cornerstone of understanding how we best service those markets. So the potential for Limerick to grow is huge.
And what about the future of Uber itself? I mean, it's an extraordinary company with extraordinary growth. I mean, can you possibly tell me, or can you even fathom where you're going to be in 2 years' time?
We certainly know we've got a long way to go. Like our mission statement is transportation as reliable as running water for everywhere, everyone. So that's pretty ambitious. That certainly means that...
no pressure.
Certainly means that I can't be sitting back and resting on our laurels. If you even just look at Ireland, we've got so far to go in bringing the services that are becoming a global phenomenon to the streets of Ireland. You know, at the moment we're operating only in Dublin and only with a taxi product and a chauffeur limousine product.
Is the challenge though with Ireland though that you don't have a lot of huge big city hubs like you would in the UK or France or the United States? You have Dublin, Cork, Limerick, Galway, and then after that you're struggling to find really big cities in which to operate in.
The challenge with Ireland is more really around the regulation designing what type of service we can bring. To be able to bring to the roads of Ireland a service which means to bring a service that's reliable enough, meaning that there is a car. If our ambition is to challenge the need for you to own your own private car, a couple of things need to happen. One is that we need to be able to provide a service where there is always a car available. When you need to get to the train station, when you need to get to work, when you need to get to wherever you need to be, you can't take a risk that there's not going to be a car available. So that's part one. Part two is that it needs to be affordable. It needs to be much cheaper than the current options are in the market for you to say, I'm actually not going to own my own private car. When people stop owning their own private cars, that opens up this huge market. All of these trips that were being done previously in private cars, people are now prepared to pay for to get from A to B rather than the alternative of owning their own cars.
Is there, you said it to make it cheaper and more affordable than what's currently available on the market. is there danger then that you're going to get into a price war, and then therefore the taxi service or taxis are going to find themselves in a race to the bottom? Is there a danger in that, or is there a way to kind of cap that and make sure that the level stays somewhere reasonable?
We see so the service that's really becoming a global phenomenon for Uber is ride sharing, and we see it as being very different to taxi. Taxi we work with in countries all across the world. I mean, no place have we been has taxi disappeared overnight. Taxi is still going to be the most efficient. Taxis are allowed to rank out the front of the busiest parts of town. Taxis are able to be street hailed. So taxis do a great job of serving our cities and serving our really populated centres of town. They can use bus lanes. They're always going to get you to the airport faster and those things. There's always going to be a need for taxis. What ride sharing does though is opens up the scope of transportation options for people outside of those core city centres. So it allows people living in the suburbs to have a ride within 3 to 5 minutes, and at prices which means it makes sense for them not to have to own.
Is that often the confusion with Uber though, that people just look at it and go, you're a taxi company? And it's not necessarily the case. You're a car facilitation company rather than, or a ride facilitation company rather than just a taxi service.
Absolutely. And look, we probably need to get better at managing that narrative and trying to explain that what we're trying to create here is not just to take a chunk out of a current taxi market. That's not what we're after at all. We're really looking to build that new marketplace where people no longer own their own cars. Just to give you an example, in Los Angeles, where we've now been for 5 years, in the past 5 years, what we call the ground transportation market, so taxi, chauffeurs and ride-sharing companies, that market has grown by 500% in 5 years. Before that, I think it was lucky to have grown by single digits. Within that 500% growth, taxi itself was only impacted by less than 10%. I mean, we're not seeing taxi fall off a cliff. Taxi holds a really important place, and public hire vehicles like taxi, which are able to rank, pick up off the streets and sit in the most populous places, still work really, really well for cities.
Fantastic. If people want to find out more about Uber, keep up to date with the story, etc., where can they get the information, particularly in Ireland, of course?
Particularly in Ireland, follow us on the blog. So if you head to uber.com and then look for Ireland, you'll find plenty of blog posts there, hopefully, which will keep you updated on our ongoing story. Fantastic.
Kieran Harte from Uber, thanks very much for joining us. It's been a pleasure to get an insight into the fantastic story that has been Uber as well. Thanks for your time. And if you want to see more great interviews and so on, just stick with us here on gohustle.co. But for now, Kieran, absolute pleasure.
Thanks for coming
Thank
over.
you very much.
Cheers.